We've chosen as our theme for this Advent and Christmas season, Christmas gifts and the gifts of Christmas. Now, over the last few weeks, Father has been sharing with us some of his own memories of his childhood when he was a boy in Poland. And of course, looking under the Christmas tree and finding such beautiful wrapped boxes, and I think very well captured the feeling of us all in wondering exactly what was in those boxes. And as Father was speaking about his own experiences, I began to think of my own when I was little. And I remember that I used to lie under the Christmas tree and look up, which, if you've never done it, you should. It's actually a pretty unique perspective. Now, I would spend a lot of time under the Christmas tree, just sort of looking up and smelling the wonderful fragrance of the tree itself. But it also gave me an opportunity to really examine the Christmas gifts that were there. They were filled with wonderful wrapping, with different Christmas characters on there. I remember the bows were quite beautiful and shiny. And there was, in fact, so much time that you could spend under a Christmas tree that, well, you could try to really figure out, well, what was in those boxes. Personally, I found giving them a little shake could be a good way of indicating what was inside. Of course, if your mother was in the area and you were shaking it, you might, all depending on what was in the box, get a talking to, which may or may not have happened once or twice. There's lots of time, maybe even to carefully untape one side of a Christmas present and then quickly put it back once you've kind of ascertained what might be inside. I would say that it's probably a good idea, thinking back on it now, to bring some extra tape just in case it doesn't go back the way it should have. Not that I would know anything about that, but it's just a recommendation. You know, of all the things that I remember of my own childhood, I think about the wonderful feeling I received when I got a gift, but also the wonderful feeling that you received by giving a gift, even if you hadn't purchased it, but just the fact that you found a present that had your brother or sister's name on it, and you got to bring it to them and see how excited and happy they were to receive a gift on Christmas. Now, they probably opened it up pretty quickly, as my recollection, but still, for a moment there was a sense of joy and awe that was on their faces. You know, our first week, when we began to talk about the gifts of Christmas, Father talked about how exciting it is to open the gift of hope. And that is simply because hope is something that never fails. Hope is something that we can rely on. Hope is something that we can draw upon in our times of need. And hope is the gift that God gives to us this Advent season. No matter how difficult the story might be, it's never over until the story is good. Just last week, Father spoke about the other Christmas gift of the Advent season, the gift of peace. He talked about how God wishes for us to have peace with ourselves, peace with Him, and of course, peace with one another. And we know that our world today is very much in need of peace. Peace is a gift, a Christmas gift that God offers to you and to me. This week, we celebrate the gift of joy. And joy is much more than just a feeling. Joy is truly a sense of being. It's a source of constant happiness that we can draw upon, especially during those times that we need to when we're facing the challenges of life and we need some joy, that is when God and his gift of joy is most important to you and me. Happiness and joy, those are the gifts that we celebrate this week. And it reminds me of one of my favorite literary characters from the Harry Potter series, Albus Dumbledore, who of course you probably know is the schoolmaster at Hogwarts. He's always a source of good inspiration for his students and for his teachers. And I remember one of the quotes that he had in the book went something like this: that happiness can be found even in the darkest of times, if only we remember to turn on the light. What a perfect saying. I would add just one piece, and that is this: that Jesus is the light of the world. And Jesus is the light that we draw upon in those dark times that we need him. It is through Jesus that all true joy and happiness can be found. It is the gift that he gives to you and to me. And knowing that God has given us this great gift, he asks of us to do one thing: to share that great gift of joy with others, whether they need an ear to listen, or someone to lean on, or someone to celebrate with, that we can bring the joy, that gift that God gives to us, to the people that we meet, whether they be friends or family, or even strangers. Jesus calls on us to share that great gift of joy. Our first reading, we hear the story of Isaiah, and he says as much, that he has been sent by God to bring glad tidings. He says, he has sent me to bring glad tidings. Now Isaiah, he is amongst a people who are facing a great crisis. They are experiencing a type of spiritual desert. They're experiencing the loss of loved ones and homes, and they are in many ways feel strangers in a strange land. And it is exactly at that time that God sends Isaiah to his people to remind them of his message of hope, to remind him of his message of peace, and to remind him that happiness and joy will return, no matter what troubles they may be facing. It is exactly at that right time, we might say, that God sent his love among his people with a message of joy. Isaiah recognizes immediately where this source of joy and happiness comes from. He says, God is the joy of my soul. And God is the source of his joy because, in a very real way, God is joy. It's who he is, and that's why the gift is given to us. In John's Gospel, John speaks of the story of John the Baptist. And John, much like Isaiah, he too is sent among the children of Israel to give the gift of joy by proclaiming the arrival of the Messiah and the happiness that comes with it. He says, I am not the light, but I come to testify to it, to point the way to Christ, who is, after all, the greatest gift of the Advent and Christmas season, and fills our hearts with joy and happiness, knowing that he is there with us through all things, good and bad. You know, we've been given these wonderful gifts, the gifts that God gives in great abundance. the gift of peace, of hope, and of course, of joy and happiness. In the person of Jesus Christ, we receive them freely and with much love from our Father. And we must remember this. Knowing that we've received such great gifts from God, we must share them. We must share them with people who do not know Jesus Christ, who are in need of him this very day and at this very moment. And if we do that, then we become the joy and happiness of Christ in their lives. And what a wonderful Christmas gift it is to share with others.